Thousands of underage girls, some as young as 11, were victims of Pakistani grooming gangs all across the UK during a period spanning more than 20 years. There were over 1,400 victims in Rotherham alone. The victims weren't just raped and tortured, they suffered racial and religious abuse by Islamic migrants who see us as kuffar and subhuman. For those who aren't familiar with what the Islamic grooming gangs did to the underage British girls, they plied them with alcohol, drugged them, stabbed them, raped them with broken bottles and baseball bats, branded them with their initials on the inside of the anal and vaginal cavities with red-hot implements, and gang raped individual girls. Many young girls were murdered also. In total, over 100 years in sentencing has been handed down to the perpetrators. Yet we know there are hundreds, if not thousands, of abusers still walking the streets because, due to political correctness, the government did everything it could to cover up the crimes. Is there a difference between homegrown problems and imported problems? In my opinion, there is a world of difference. And to those who say they are one and the same thing, you need your head tested. We all know you're lying. The industrial rape of teenage girls by Pakistani and Bangladeshi immigrants in Britain from the mid-90s to the mid-2010s is but one of the most egregious acts of migrant terrorism in Britain's history. For those who know the story, you know what happened. For those who don't, the reality is that the police, politicians, mayors, the Crown Prosecution Service and our justice system chose to ignore the problem and, for the sake of diversity, place the blame on the young girls who were raped so as to ease community tensions and not waken the British public up to the horror which multiculturalism has brought to our shores. God forbid the public knew the truth about what we have imported. It's terrorism. And then a close second to the evil, the mass cover-up and corruption involved in protecting a certain migrant's faith and culture in the name of social cohesion and diversity. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Once you've done your own research and heard the story, there awaits for you another story. Whilst you were busy watching Coronation Street and I'm a Celebrity or at the football, the state, the police and the courts tried to cover it all up. That's a mass rape on an industrial scale. We have all been lied to. Now remember, to this day, no police or government official has been fired, arrested or charged, despite overwhelming evidence that Labour MPs and officials have done their utmost to cover up this evil. The best we can hope for, and I quote, "These convictions are also a significant milestone on our continuing journey to improve investigations into non-recent child sexual exploitation across Greater Manchester." But it's too late. And there's overwhelming evidence of street grooming occurring throughout the UK to this day. Who's heard of these operations? Jaguar, Clifton, Yewtree, Hydrant, Augusta, Sherwood and Lytton. Should we be grateful that there is such an apparent task force aimed at combating street grooming? I won't sugarcoat it. I think the policing business model looks something like this. Let people's lives be ruined, spend millions of taxpayer money on the operations, claim they're doing a great job afterwards, ignore the problem, treat the symptom by locking up patriots for being concerned over our future safety in Britain, and continue to mass import the destruction of our culture and faith and those with murderous intent on our youth, our social fabric and on our British brothers and sisters. The Labour Party have just rejected Oldham's Council's request for a government-led grooming gangs inquiry, Oldham being one of the main operational hubs for the men who groomed and raped. We all know the truth. The age of diversity, inclusion and equality, the age of political correctness on steroids, the tyranny of far-left propaganda, the mafia of corrupt politicians, woke policing and the cowards running the day-to-day operations of Britain were more concerned with being called racist and bigots than they were with the lives of vulnerable children. An actual Labour MP, Naz Shah, liked and retweeted a post on Twitter which said, and I quote, Those abused girls in Rotherham and elsewhere just need to shut their mouths for the good of #diversity. In one case, a chief reporter for The Times said police had gone around to the house. They'd found this 13-year-old girl with another young girl. She was almost completely naked. She was blind drunk, and she was with 7 adult Pakistani men. She was drunk and leery. Police arrested the 13-year-old girl for being drunk and disorderly. Those police officers were too frightened to do their job and begin the process of bringing down the cartel in that very moment. But they feared the Pakistani men. Why? Because they are cowards, yes, but because these parts of Britain are colonised by immigrant mafias. They have claimed the land as their own, their rules, their dominance, and law enforcement, both for fear and corruption in those areas. And those political officials who are complicit have their own reasons, more of political correctness-based cowardice and left-wing narcissism, meaning they have all succumbed to the status quo vis-à-vis colonised immigrant Islamic no-go zones and areas. You'll hear the same toxic rhetoric again and again. Mistakes were made, lessons have been learned, it's an isolated incident. It's racist to prosecute brown and black people. It's Islamophobic to bring Muslims who have raped on an industrial scale to justice. Those who are elected and put in power, including the police, are supposed to protect our families, and instead they have turned a blind eye to avoid being called racist. Enough is enough. Every single politician, judge and police officer involved in the cover-up should face prison. It is time to close the borders and begin mass deportations of immigrants who are not law-abiding, immigrants who are religious extremists, those who are here to spread the caliphate, and those who have murderous intent on the British public, who they see as cattle and commodities. The British people and those innocent victims deserve justice. We will avenge them.